This is the SCNZ handbook and online tool. So this was developed following their publication of their Connections Design handbook, and it contains most of the information, or the results of most of the information that's in the handbook. You'll need a login, and once you've logged in, you can go to the site and pick out from a pull-down list. So here is your selection list. Pick a category. Let's start with universal beams. What sort of size do we want? Let's have a 360 universal beam. Pick out the mass, and then pick out the connection. So these codes are a little bit cryptic, so I'll explain those a little later. So let's say we want an AC 1-250 SWC. What on earth does that mean? But we'll select it anyway. And the website tells me it's got a shear capacity of 283 kilonewtons. Well, that's good if that's what you want. So that's a nice little summary of that. So what does it look like? Well, you can review the report. Click on the View Report button, and it spits out a report that looks like that. It gives you a generic diagram or generic drawing of the connection. So in this case, all that cryptic meant was angle cleat connection. So AC means angle cleat. And the 50% was the 50% capacity. So on the left-hand side, you have a summary of the input information. So the size of the member and the size of the angle cleat. By default, it picks grade 250 for your angle cleats. And by default, it picks grade 300 for your member sizes, and so on. And by default, it picks grade 8.8 20mm diameter bolts. So this is basically from a library of ready-made connections. So on the right-hand side, you have the connection and capacity, in this case 283. Well, that's all good. There's also a drawing. So if you click on the View Detailed Drawings, it pops out what looks like a detailed drawing of that particular connection, except it's not that particular connection, it's a generic, and that will explain some of the dimensions, but it's good enough to post in your calculations. Coming back to the home page. Now, not all of the sections have got all of the calculations. So, for example, if I pick my square hollow sections, pick a section size and a mass, what kind of connections have I got? Well, I've basically got a choice of base plates, a BPP base plate or pinned base plate, and that pops out and says I have a connection axial capacity of 420 and a shear capacity of 57. If we look at the drawing, it gives you generic drawings for a generic base plate. So we've actually got a square hollow section, so it's probably one of these things. On the left, you have the same sort of detail for an I section, or on the right, a tube. Coming back to our plate, we can also view the report. And again, we have information about the connection design and the connection capacity. Okay, we can come back. We can view that report, and we can view the detailed drawings. Now, if we select another type, say the BS4 universal beams, and it has the section sizes in there, but it won't allow me to design it. So it's designing connections which are basically standardized and standardized from a template. And what sits behind all this is the information that's contained in their online handbook. Now, some of these cryptic clues for the connections, you might work out from this button here, the detailing constants. And for example, your ACNC, so angle cleat with no cope, and that gives you some detailing constraints in there. Okay, So that's your basic starting point if you're designing connections in steel design in New Zealand. And it's a very quick and easy tool for designing and checking the basic connections you will have in many building frames. Connection types, as a reminder, this isn't really posted on their website, but it's buried in the handbook somewhere. So the WP, it means web side plates, and the FE means flexible end plates, the AC means angled cleats. So it might be worth taking a screen grab of this right now. And then we have MEP for moment end plate, MEPS for moment end plate splice, and so on. And we go on, BWBS for bolted welded beam splice, and so on through to our BPP, which we've seen as our base plate, which is pinned. So this is the main reference if you're in New Zealand, and you've got part 1 and part 2. So 1 tells you all the theory and explains how you design connections, and then the other book actually gives you the connections themselves. So if you're not a member, they're extortionately priced, but if you're our member, it's reasonably priced books in there. And if you want to become a member, you go to the Steel Construction New Zealand website and click on the Become a Member. Now there's a corporate membership and there's a student membership as well.